Alright, so who is Morgan and why is her lore so confusing? Well, Oberon in Lost Belt 6 explains that similar to Artoria, who is a dragon-human hybrid, Morgan is a special birth, being created by the Isles of Britain, but being birthed by Igraine and Uther, making her a human fairy hybrid, having ownership of the land technically, as well as fighting to keep mystics on top, where her contrast Artoria chose humanity's side, which was the correct answer. In that same Lost Belt, Sherlock Holmes explains to us that all tellings of Morgan's story are in fact true, and deduces that she is composed of three aspects: the human, the fairy, and Artoria's sister, being Britain's avatar, and thus all were separate entities, meaning there were three different Morgans going around. In Garden of Avalon, Sir Kay explains Morgan's transition from being an innocent fairy to a battle maiden and to the witch that we know her to be. So considering all of that, we can conclude that Morgan either has multiple personalities and changed over time, or Morgan has been three different individuals the whole time, being of supernatural birth, technically created by Britain as its avatar, making her a fairy, but she was physically given birth to through intercourse with Igraine and Uther, although some people think that her father is Tentacle. And depending on how you look at it, she either wasn't human at all and was just pretending to be so. During Morgan's life, when King Arthur ruled as the King of Camelot, she operated from the shadows. She was known as a powerful witch on the level of Merlin because she was taught by Merlin. Her name, Morgan Le Fay, meaning Morgan the Fairy, the child of the land and rightful owner of the Isle of Britain, hence why she strongly opposed King Arthur ruling over her. So she came up with many plans to be a thorn in King Arthur's side, integrating her many children into the Round Table and eventually creating the homunculus Mordred, who is a clone of Artoria. She's also the reason why Artoria lost Caliburn and eventually got Excalibur from Vivian being another aspect of Morgan, hence why Saber Alter has Excalibur Morgan, named appropriately so. Even though she is known for being an evil fairy, some tales say that she brought King Arthur's soul back to Avalon, but sadly that is unconfirmed, since over time many tales have muddied the truth with what did and did not happen. Eventually, Camelot did come to an end, and Morgan set up plans. One of those was to make the original Logos react, which would be replicated and be known as Ad, and have Sir Kay's personality used as a way to seal Rongo Miniad, eventually finding itself in Gray's possession. In modern times, Gray's village, the Blackmore Cemetery, follows a ritual that Waver, as Lord Elmwood II suspects, was started by Morgan as a plan to revive the king, doing this over generations, eventually finding itself imprinted onto Gray, giving her King Arthur's face. Now some of this is just speculation, since we have no solid evidence from Morgan herself, but we do know they have in possession Erosion, the penetrating dagger of gold that splits soul and mind from body, meant to be used on Gray, and that the Black Madonna statue might have been made in the image of Morgan, but as things stand, we can only work on assumptions. What makes Lost Belt Morgan so different is that she is a fairy from Paradise, also known as Avalon, which in the Lost Belt is referred to as an A-ray or a sub-bell, someone who has received a purpose from the planet's inner sea. She went by the name Tonelico, localized as Ash. She was taken in by the Rain Clan, who gave her that name, but they were killed for protecting her, since the fairy fairies from the British Lost Belt did not see fairies from outside their land as anything but invaders, even though fairies from paradise are actually the closest thing to the owners of said land. The big turning point was actually when Beryl Gut summoned proper human history Morgan, wanting a servant that could break the world. Tenelico would get memories of proper human history Morgan the servant, because Morgan race shifted her memories, sacrificing her body, sending them to her past Lost Belt self. She would then change the events of history by making everyone think she died by turning a fairy into her appearance wise, taking away her memories and letting her get killed. Morgan would also use his race shift ability to send calamities back into the past so that whoever's there could handle them. She would then choose to rule over the fairies that she hated so much for all the things they did to her as Tenelico, which were a variety of things, not including poisoning. Surprisingly, the one thing they didn't think of doing to her, among beheadings and other ways of murder. As the queen, she does whatever she can for the sake of the land to expand and maintain it. While not ideal, she did solve some issues in a cold and ruthless manner, but because she didn't fulfill her purpose to make the fairies repent, one way of doing so is by making them forge Excalibur to set things right. Someone else had to take her place, that being Artoria Avalon or Artoria Castor. Castor being the name that she was given by the fairies that took her in. Morgan acknowledges Artoria as one of the chosen, a fairy from paradise who has the right to overthrow her and be sinless in doing so, and will only consider her an enemy when she decides to actually ring the bells, announcing herself the child of prophecy to the world. Now, while Lost Belt Morgan may seem more calm compared to what we hear about her other self, she still does have some of her old traits and habits. They're just subdued because she's gotten so bored over the many years of living that actually kept her in check. She did adopt a blood-sucking vampire who eventually learned to love torturing other fairies if it meant she could get Morgan's love, because Morgan saw someone with similar experiences to her in said child, this being Babanshi. But her love for Babanshi would eventually put her in a position where she was left vulnerable for an instant that got her killed, unable to take back her throne, and died. Morgan, while she is in fact cold, she does admit that she has been soft on her daughter, and decided after one failing too many to not give her any more chances, as well as scolding Beryl for not being able to take care of a child, reconsidering her relationship with him, no longer her master, but her husband at the very least on paper. In terms of her abilities, this Morgan has 12 Rangominiads that are around Camelot's gates. She has the garden that she trapped Merlin in. She's capable of race shifting without the use of a coffin, and a multitude of other abilities. The one thing she does hate though is bugs, which is why the fairies that look like bugs that can't integrate in the hybrid of human and fairy culture find themselves living in the Welsh forest where Oberon became the king of. It's also why she sent her knights to burn the forest down, on top of it being Oberon's base, as a sign that she's serious and is going to fight back, which actually gave Artoria a traumatic flashback to what happened to her home called Tintagel. Now, if you found this interesting and you want to learn more about Morgan's rule or the Lost Belt, check out the video in the card or on the screen.